Welcome to episode number 31 of the Road to Cinema podcast, featuring director and cinematographer Ernest Dickerson. We discuss his long collaboration with director Spike Lee, which spanned 6 films, including his debut feature She's Gotta Have It, School Days, Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, Jungle Fever, and Malcolm X, which earned Denzel Washington a Best Actor nomination at the Academy Awards. We'll also discuss Ernest's work directing television, which includes The Wire, The Walking Dead, and the new Amazon Prime series, Bosch. For more information on the Road to Cinema podcast, to read the Road to Cinema blog, and to watch our Road to Cinema YouTube series, please visit jogroadproductions.com. You can follow us on Twitter @jogroad, and you can also like us on Facebook, facebook.com/jogrod. And now we join director and cinematographer Ernest Dickerson as he discusses his experience at NYU Graduate School, where he would go on to meet his future collaborator, director Spike Lee.
Well, the great thing about NYU was that you actually had a chance to make films there, so which is one of the reasons I went. You know, you have several weeks in the classroom, but then after that you go out and the first year everybody has to make 3 films. At least that was when I was there, which was in the 80s, and everybody had to make 3 films that first year, and dealing primarily visually the first year, so you don't really get a chance to really deal with sound until the second year. Sound as a narrative tool. So I think the thing that I got most out of it was thinking visually, being able to, thinking visually in terms of telling a story, primarily using the camera. And it's something that I've continued to this day. As a director, my main tool is the camera, and I try to always find ways of telling the story through the shots, through the collection of shots, as opposed to just documenting the action. So,
yeah.
But, I think that's what I got from NYU.
Were you focused on cinematography at NYU, or were you sort of also directing as well?
Yeah, well, I was a cinematography major, but no matter what your major is, everybody has a chance to write and direct their own films. So I did write and direct my film, and I photographed films for other students. Some people, will go from sound in one film, or they direct a film and then they do sound in another film, and they'd help out as gaffers or grips or whatever. But pretty early on, I kind of staked myself out that I wanted to photograph other people's films. So that's pretty much what I did.
Yeah. Was that sort of how you ended up teaming up with Spike Lee for, I believe it was called Joe's Bed-Stuy Barbershop, We Cut Heads?
Yeah, that was his graduate thesis film. I had actually shot a film in the second year for Spike called Sarah, and that was the first time we worked together. He did an adaptation of a short story about sibling rivalry at a Thanksgiving dinner, and we photographed that at his uncle's house in Brooklyn, and that was the first time we did that. First time we worked together. And then the following year, I did Joe's Bed-Stuy.
I'm curious, is that film available anywhere? I've been trying to look for it, but it seems like it's sort of, I don't know if it's on DVD or anything. Joe's
Barbershop?
Yeah, Joe's Bed-Stuy, yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, I wonder, you might be able to find it on YouTube, maybe, but it never got a video release that I know of. It never got a video release. It premiered at the New Films, New Directors series in New York. That's where it was first seen, and it did win him a Student Academy Award, but it never got a video release. So I don't know. Check YouTube.
Yeah.
I haven't looked. It might be on there.
Oh no, definitely. I'll take a look. I was curious about sort of your collaboration process with Spike Lee, and from those initial student films when you were working together. Was there anything that you guys sort of clicked on in terms of how you saw things visually, or how you were sort of interpreting cinematography?
Well, we spent a lot of time talking about movies. You know, a lot of times we went to see movies together. You know, a new interesting film coming out, we'd sometimes go to see it. So, you know, we were interested in a lot of the same films. We were big fans of Martin Scorsese, big fans of his films. Francis Coppola, we were big fans of his. So, you know, we would always talk and you know, go through the process. You know, usually before you start a film, you look at other movies. You know, just trying to, you know, get on the same page in terms of what the style of the film is going to be. And so we did that, and it's something we did all the time through all the films that we did together up to and including Malcolm X.
Yeah, I'm curious, you know, because there is it feels like there's always like kind of a vivid visual style in those films that you worked on with Spike Lee. I was curious too, as far as a cinematographer's collaboration with a production designer and also a wardrobe person. Do you feel that that's very important initially to speak to those departments in terms of having a color scheme or sort of visual references that are consistent?
Oh, definitely. That was of paramount importance. I think the first time it really became obvious was when we did Do the Right Thing, because to portray the heat of the summer, I was going to use color primarily. Colors that were in the warm earth tones, yellow, reds, and stay away from cooler colors, which would be blues and greens. And so that was a coordinated effort with myself and Ruth Carter, the costume designer, and Wynn Thomas, the production designer. So, yeah, it always has to be that way, and it has to be a harmonious whole. In the film before Do the Right Thing, we attempted to do that in School Days. The problem was that about a week before we started shooting, we lost 90% of our locations. So all of our plans kind of fell apart there. We tried to make it work as best as we could. But a lot of times, the first time I saw a set was when I walked in to shoot it without ever scouting it beforehand. So it was, but Do the Right Thing, and then Mo Better Blues, and Jungle Fever, and especially Malcolm X. Those were all, you know, pretty planned out, coordinated between the different departments.
Yeah. On She's Gotta Have It, which was it was shot mostly in black and white, though there is one sequence that's shot in color. But when you're working in black and white, you know, as you talked about, sort of working with production designers and wardrobe and coordinating, is that even more difficult? Because I guess sometimes you don't know how what the end result will be when it's photographed in black and white in terms of photographing a particular color.
Well, you can get an idea because you know that certain tones, certain colors that translate on the grayscale as the same shade of gray. Those are things you have to worry about. The main problem with black and white is separating your subject from the background, from the wall, whatever. And it's either you do that either by backlight, you know, we have an edge light on the person to help them separate them from the background, or by working with the background, controlling the tones in that background in your lighting. So you have to be just more careful about that, because if you have blue, a certain shade of blue and a certain shade of green, they might translate as the same shade of gray in black and white. And that's the thing you don't want to have happen. You don't want it to all blend in together and become a mush.
Yeah. I was curious on Do the Right Thing. This may have just been kind of a rumor that I read, but was it originally intended to be shot at Universal in LA instead of in Brooklyn?
No.
No?
No, it was always intended to be Brooklyn.
Okay, so then in Brooklyn, you guys sort of built. I guess what was it? You took like a block, and then you had built all the sets sort of within that block. Is that correct?
Yeah, we found. Well, I came on pretty early in pre-production because I had to control, really gain control of the look of the film pretty early on. Since the problem was we were going to be shooting for about 8 weeks, and I had to make it look like one day. So I laid down the ground rule that whatever street we shot on, it had to run north and south. And the reason being is that since the sun travels from east to west, one side of the street is always going to be in shade, depending upon the time of day it is. And if I have a cloudy day, it would be easier for me to make a cloudy day look like the shaded side of the street, because there was no way I was going to be able to pump up a lot of light in there to make sunlight. So it was north and south. And then we were lucky to find the street that had that vacant lot on the corner. Actually, I think I did demand north and south, and then they found the block that had the vacant lot on the corner that ran north and south, and that's where we were going to build the pizza parlor. So that's the only structure that was built, was Sal's Pizzeria. Some of the other houses on that block had been in a little bit of disrepair, so some of those were fixed up, and the homeowners got to have their houses fixed up by the production, so couldn't stay that way after we left.
Yeah, I was curious. Did you use a lot of wide lenses when you were shooting close-ups?
Mm-hmm. Yep, a lot of wide-angle lenses.
Because I love that look. I'm curious, is that always something that you've been attracted to, using wide lenses for close-ups?
It just seemed to work for that film. I do like wide-angle lenses. You have to be careful with them because they do distort. But since we were trying to really go for the fact that this is the hottest day of the summer with the heat and just the extremity of the emotion that the hottest day of the summer sometimes causes, it was the color and the wide-angle lenses, and we did a lot of Dutch angles in there. I like wide-angle lenses. I'm a big fan of the films of Orson Welles, and nobody used wide-angle lenses better than he did. And also Terry Gilliam uses wide-angle lenses really beautifully.
Yeah, you get a greater depth of field sometimes as well, which can be interesting visually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely do.
When you were working with Spike Lee on throughout all of the films, did you ever create storyboards or shot lists that were very specific?
Yeah, actually, in Do the Right Thing, the entire riot at Sal's Pizzeria was storyboarded. In Mo Better Blues, the fight scene in the alley, and how it intercut with Denzel playing his horn, playing his trumpet in the club, and how it was all mixing together. That was all storyboarded. So, yeah, a lot of times, for both of those times, I think Spike let me design those sequences because he just got so busy in his producing duties that designing those scenes, he asked me to do those. So I worked with Randy Balsmeyer, who was a storyboard artist. And, some other scenes in Malcolm X, like the early scene when Malcolm's father's house is raided by the Ku Klux Klan. We storyboarded that because there was going to be a visual effects component to the shooting that evening when there was a visual effects shot with the Klansmen riding away over the hill, and we had a huge full moon behind them. So yeah, always storyboard for complex sequences like that so that everybody knows what the shots are going to be, what the action is going to be, what their different departments are going to be required to do.
Yeah.
It's just the best way to do that, especially, when you're working on a tight schedule, and you've got to get it done quickly, and things have to work first time every time.
Yeah, in that regard as well, when you are storyboarding, do you also leave room in terms of the staging of the actors, or do you feel like that's also very specific when you're storyboarding?
Usually in dialogue scenes with actors and stuff like that, sometimes we would have an image. Spike might draw one image that he wanted to have in there, how two people related to each other. Because sometimes, how they spatially relate to each other in the frame is another way of telling the story. And we would try and get that into it. But usually with dialogue scenes, you block it with the actors and your shots come out of that.
Yeah. One of my favorite films of Spike's is Jungle Fever. I think there's some really incredible performances, and I think Samuel L. Jackson ended up winning a special prize at the Cannes Film Festival.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, there's so many different worlds in that film. There's sort of with there's the world of sort of Samuel L. Jackson within his drug addiction. There's the Italian neighborhood. There's the black neighborhood. I'm curious if, when you were going into it, if you sort of saw a different visual style for each of those worlds.
Well, the neighborhoods kind of decided that, the areas where we were shooting, because you had the Italian American neighborhood, and the types of homes that those are usually, single family homes, a lot of single family homes with aluminum siding, which seems to be the big thing in New York and New Jersey, because I'm from New Jersey, and I've seen a lot of homes with aluminum siding in them. And then the Taj Mahal, we really wanted to make that place really extreme. The Taj Mahal is a huge crack hall where all the crack users were going in there when they were, all using their crack. And the visual that I was going through was the air filled with smoke, but also at every frame there would be you could see the lighters flaring up as each person was lighting up a pipe. And for me, that just represented a soul that was just dying. So we always made sure we had that. And I lit that with primarily a cool light, a bluish light, just to make it feel more alienating. And then the contrast with the warmth from the flames in the middle of that. So that came out of that. The home that Ossie and Ruby lived in, it's a huge old apartment building. I think it was called the Apthorpe, and it just had that old wood panel, old New York architecture feel. So that kind of dictated a whole other feel there too. So a lot of times, it comes out of how you're being affected by the environments when you go there to shoot. You go and you scout the locations, and then finally when you decide on what locations you're going to use, that's when the plan starts coming together, and the feeling you get from each place sometimes determines what the lighting style is going to be.
Do you have any preference between working on a constructed set versus working in a practical location, like in a real house, or even a real office or real street?
I do like location, and even sometimes when I do have control over the building of a set, sometimes I'll try and shoot that set almost like a real location, give myself the limitations. Sometimes you can't do that, but sometimes it's nice to be able to take out a wall. But I do like shooting location. It presents its own set of problems, but I like being out in the world.
Yeah. I'm curious about Malcolm X, which is a huge epic film, and there are so many time periods that you're moving through in the film, and so many sort of different sort of areas of Malcolm's life. Did you see that at all in terms of sort of how you would, when you were going through the script and prepping, sort of how you would shoot each section of his life to sort of make it come off different? Because I really feel there is kind of a distinct kind of visual sense to different sections of the film.
Yeah, in Malcolm, there were 5 different styles. And for me, that really represented, as you noted, the different phases of Malcolm's life. We went into Malcolm X. Actually, Malcolm X, the autobiography of Malcolm X, was one of the films that Spike and I first talked about, what we wanted to make, what we hoped our future would bring us. When we talked about the movies we really wanted to make, we both said we wanted to do the autobiography of Malcolm X. And so we were really happy that we were ultimately able to do it. But going into Malcolm X, we knew that most people didn't know who Malcolm X was, that there had been so much disinformation about him over the years, that we wanted to really just put him in people's faces and so that people knew all about him. So the earlier part of his life, I was trying to go for the look of old Technicolor, and with in the costumes and in the production design and in my lighting, and I had a filtration that was set to give it that look. I even shot with a slower film, so I would be forced to use harder and bigger lighting sources, the kind that they would use back in the days of Technicolor, except for the art. But I was forcing myself to just use a harder light, and it helped because the filtration package that I had in front of the lens was cutting it back too. It was knocking it down. So I was shooting it with a fairly low exposure index, and it was the filtration included a brown net that I made from stockings, from ladies' stockings. So the brown net, and then as their life of crime increased, then we went to a black net, which softened the image but gave it a slightly more contrastier edge.
And that would that be going over the lens or going over the lights that you had?
No, that was over the lens.
Over the lens.
That was over the lens, and I had frames made up with the nets on them, and we would just fit it into the matte box. So, and then when he goes to in prison, I was going for a colder look, so I shot with tungsten balanced film, but I used what did I do? Yeah, tungsten balanced film, but I shot with daylight fixtures, and I used a filter called an 81EF, which is half 85, which only halfway corrects the image. So that's why all of that has a really cool really cool feel to it. And then once he gets out of prison and meets with Elijah Muhammad, I went for a very clear, very sharp look, no filtration, and correct, using tungsten fixtures with the tungsten light, or if I was outside, I would put the regular 85. So I was going for a very clear look. And then when he makes his pilgrimage to Mecca, and when he makes his pilgrimage to Mecca and Egypt, we actually shot that in Egypt, and I started using a slight diffusion filter to just soften the image a little bit. So each one was just to try and give a certain look to each phase of Malcolm's life.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful film. I believe it screened at the TCM Classic Film Festival recently.
Yeah, I was there. It was a good screening. It was good seeing it on the big screen.
When you were talking about sort of with Spike Lee, your passion to make Malcolm X, was that before She's Gotta Have It that you had been talking with him about it?
Yeah, it was actually not long after we first met, after our first year in film school. We kind of, when we met each other, we knew that I knew he had gone to Morehouse, and he knew I went to Howard, and our schools are rivals at homecoming games. So, we started off by ragging each other on our schools and everything. But then eventually, the conversation goes towards film and what we were really there for, talking about our dreams, what we really wanted to do. And we both mentioned that, it'd be great if one day we could do the autobiography of Malcolm X, but what are the chances of that happening? Probably not at all. So when it did happen, it was amazing because I'd already directed my first film. I'd already directed Juice, and then Spike got Malcolm, and I basically said, no, nobody's going to shoot that movie but me. And so Spike very generously delayed production on Malcolm by about 3 weeks to give me time to finish up my post-production on Juice.
Wow. He was he was really loyal to you in letting you do that.
Yeah. Still, we're still good friends.
Seeing the film again after so many years, what did it bring back for you in terms of what do you feel was sort of so powerful that you saw, seeing the film again that really resonated with you?
Well, it was seeing it with an audience again, seeing audience reaction, hearing the audience react, hearing that soundtrack on coming, out of big speakers. The full cinema experience, after seeing it for years and as DVD and Blu-ray copies on home screens, on small screens with not such a large crowd. It was just great how the audience really responded to it. And, you miss that after a while, after a film goes to video, that whole communal experience of experiencing that movie on the big screen with a whole bunch of other people and that shared experience, you miss that. And it was good to have that happen on that day.
Yeah, and a great performance by Denzel Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm curious for you, now that sort of digital technology has really sort of eliminated film in a sense, do you have any nostalgia for working on film, or do you see a lot of possibilities with the use of all these digital cameras like Reds, Alexas, even DSLRs?
So far I've been kind of lucky. Actually, I just finished shooting a show that's shooting film.
Really?
A movie for Amazon. A TV show for Amazon called Hand of God with Ron Perlman and Andre Royo. And we were shooting 35 on that. Walking Dead shoots on 16 millimeter. So in the television world, we've been able to bounce back and forth quite a bit. I'm planning on shooting a film in December of this year. We'll probably shoot digital just because we'll be shooting out of the country, and the logistics of trying to do a film with film, shooting out of the country in the Caribbean, which is where would be quite horrendous because, there aren't as many film labs as there used to be. So that is a bit of a problem. But I love film. I'm kind of glad that I'm not a cinematographer anymore because I don't have to worry about learning, the digital, the nuts and bolts of digital. So all I have to do is just concentrate on working with a cinematographer to tell the best story possible with the digital cameras. I love the Alexa. The Arri Alexa, I think, is the best digital camera out there.
Wow. Why do you think you prefer the Alexa over some of the others?
Because the Alexa feels more like a film camera. It acts more like a film camera. I was never impressed with the red because it's out in the field. It doesn't really seem to hold up as well. When I was shooting episode of the TV series Bosch for Amazon, we were shooting with the Alexa out in the valley, and it kept overheating. I mean, the camera had to sit there with an ice bag on it to cool it down so we could continue to shoot with it. And that never happens with the Alexa.
Yeah.
And it's just, I guess it's just the continuity, because when I was a cinematographer, I always shot with Arriflex cameras. That was always my main one. So the Alexa is Arriflex. It's continuing that whole stream. But it is a better camera, I believe. It's stronger. It feels more like a film camera. All the assistants, the ACs and operators that I know, they prefer the Alexa over the red cameras.
I'm curious, when you transitioned from primarily being a cinematographer to then directing feature films and television, was it difficult for you at all to sort of delegate sort of the cinematography role to someone else, or did you always feel like you were sort of in that job in a sense, or sort of in that role?
It wasn't hard because it actually in pre-production and preparing the films, I was able to get very specific with my cinematographers and really decide on the look of the film early on. Actively work with them in shooting tests and figuring out the look of it and how to achieve that look. And then once we got into principal photography, into shooting the show, I would just let them do it, because by that time we were already on the same page. Usually before I start a show, I have an idea what I want the show to look like, and I always have reference materials, books. I have a collection of books of photography, where sometimes I'll hunt some down. We'll always look at movies, deciding on things that we like and things I want to do. So to me, each film should have its own style. But since I'm primarily a visual person, I think that style should come from me. So, and to me, that's part of the fun of it, coming up with the visual style of the movies. So.
Working in television, where sort of every show has their own look, whether it be The Wire or Walking Dead or Bosch, all these shows sort of have a very distinct look to them. When you're coming on as a director to direct various episodes, do you feel like you're trying to sort of maintain a certain look, or at times do you also feel free to sort of embellish on that look and sort of add your own signature to it?
Yeah, I'm always trying to find ways of, working within the style of that show, and find interesting images. And that comes from different locations. Sometimes you find a new location where action is taking place, and just find interesting ways of shooting it. So, but I always, look at the shows and different directors, and within that style still are able to achieve different things. Each director has a different way of working. So, but within that style, within the limitations of that style, I always try to find a way of making that work. And it's coming from the locations, coming from costumes, special costumes if necessary. You find ways of getting your own thing in there somehow.
Yeah. Is there a project that you're working on right now at the moment? I remember you mentioned the show for Amazon, but there was also a film as well?
Yeah, there's a film that I'm planning to shoot on the island of Curacao at the end of the year into the beginning of next year. Curacao is a former Dutch colony. It's off the coast of Venezuela. I'm going to be doing a movie called Double Play.
What is the film about?
It's set in Curacao in 1973. politics, sexual politics on the island of that time, and how things come to a head on a hot summer day during a game of dominoes. Between four gentlemen.
What actors do you have attached?
Well, we're still working on it. We're getting our cast together. We're out to some people right now, and we'll see how we're able to do. But we're still working on that.